Hello everyone, this is part 4 of What If Naruto and Hinata Had a Kid, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. The walk to Sakura's apartment was a little long, but it did give them a nice view of the city. When they crossed the bridge, the little girl was suddenly fascinated by the fish. Hinata laughed and helped her daughter count up to 10 of them, and then led her to continue walking. The rest of the way was occupied with babbling make-up names to any kind of pet the little girl could have, questions about Sakura and why they needed to go, questions of what was for lunch, dinner, and maybe a late-night snack. Mama. Hinata noticed the sudden change in tone from her daughter, and looked right at her. Her tiny hand in her own and tightened a little. Hinata didn't know why, but something was worrying her daughter. Yes. Where is Daddy? The girl's bright blue eyes shined with the bright afternoon sun. How much she had his eyes. Hinata had to smile. Away on a mission. When he coming home? Soon. Hinata said, though to be completely honest she really had no earthly idea when her husband would be home. That was the life of a ninja though, she knew that all too well. Come on, if we waste time Sakura will get annoyed. Hinata said, tugging her daughter along. When they got to Sakura's door, Hinata was too quick to notice her daughter's banter had slowed down. The sugar high must have worn off, or it was closer to afternoon than Hinata realized. Afternoon was nap time. She bent down and picked up the tired-looking girl in her arms. She latched onto her mother instantly, her small body curled against Hinata's and she snuggled until she was comfortable. Hinata knocked on the door of her friend's house. The little girl in her arms was fast asleep and didn't seem to stir at the sound of door knocking. It wasn't long before it swung open to reveal an older-looking Sakura with her short pink hair. She was dressed in a large shirt which made no attempt to hide the very large bump protruding out of her stomach. Sakura. Yumi suddenly bounced with energy at the sight of her new person. Yumi. Sakura said with almost the same enthusiasm. When the energized girl had successfully hopped out of her mother's arms, Sakura bent down to hug her. The two women exchanged warm hellos before Sakura let them into her clean apartment. Almost a complete opposite of Hinata's own home that was riddled with toddler toys and baby-safe corners. What did they say? Hinata asked once Sakura had closed the door. Twins. Sakura almost beamed her joy. Her hands went to her stomach as though she was already hugging her children. Oh my, two. Can you handle that? It looks like you're already at your max and you're just 6 months. Hinata commented, almost alarmed at her friend's growth. If she remembered correctly, Yumi was a normal baby, but she felt like a whale during her pregnancy. She couldn't imagine two at once. They said I should be fine. Sakura said with a slight shrug and a smile. Sakura having 2 babies. Yumi piped up, jumping on her feet. Her face glowed with the possible thought of having playmates. Sometimes being the only one wasn't as fun as one would think. Yes, 2 babies, 1 boy and 1 girl. Sakura answered her question, smiling down. The 2 women watched with a smile as the younger girl let her hands drift over Sakura's large stomach. Her face was perplexed, trying to grasp the notion of how people fit inside other people. How they fit? Yumi asked, raising an eyebrow. Sakura laughed. They're tiny. When they come out they'll begin to grow just like you. This seemed to form some kind of understanding in the little girl's mind. She seemed to have another question on her lips before turning to her mother. Her bright blue eyes shined in a way Hinata was all too used to seeing. It was the look of wanting something, the look Yumi gave to any passerby she felt she could get something out of. Clever little girl. Mama, can I have one too? What? Hinata asked, not too sure of her daughter's meaning. Sakura just laughed. I want one. Sakura gonna have 2. Mama only has 1. Yumi said, her bright blue of her eyes shining into almost tears. Hinata had to smile, when realization dawned on her of her daughter's sudden questions. Maybe someday. We'll see. Hinata said to her daughter, smiling kindly. I just remembered, I left something at, I'm going to go, see you two later. Sakura was out the door and gone into the night before Naruto had a chance to stop her. Once the door was shut behind her, he turned his attention back to the pale-looking girl inside. Naruto stood there, his normal black shirt and pants, his hair all a mess, his forehead protector clinging to his head. His bright eyes looked at her. Confusion and concern both stared down at her. Suddenly Hinata thought having Sakura in the room wouldn't have been so bad after all. Hinata, are you okay? He took steps closer to her, a mix of wanting to run forward and run away was spinning her apart. This was seriously not how she wanted to do things. What are you doing back so early? She said suddenly. You said you'd be gone for at least 2 or maybe even 3 weeks. A small attempt to take the conversation off herself and her lies that had spilled out into his ears. Me. What about you? Sakura said you were on a mission with your team. What are you doing here? Were you hiding from me? He said, taking to notice she hadn't been in the room before, nor had she come out to greet him when he was there. But somehow she had showed up afterwards and looked absolutely petrified to see him. Well, she tried to find the right way to say things. Something that would be gentle and calm him instead of blurting out the words and watching him turn on his heel and stomp out the door. Hinata, are you okay? Did something happen? His voice was cautious. He was worried about her. He was worried she was really sick, or that something had really happened. She felt so bad for making him think that, but then again it's not like it was really a lie. Something had really happened, and she was a bit sick. Sort of, she stuttered out in a low whisper, her eyes tearing from his gaze. She knew this only provoked more negative thoughts from him, the guilt tore at her. What happened? He sounded so worried. She could practically see the wheels in his head running, trying to figure out what had happened to his beloved innocent Hinata to make her lie about a mission. Are you sick? Have you seen Tsunade? How bad is it? Does Neji or your father know? Questions came one after another. They threw him out before Hinata could have a chance to answer even one of them. He took more steps toward her and before she could blink he had his wonderful warm hands wrapped around her face. He looked at her intently, he was so worried now. He was even getting scared. She had to force herself not to cry just yet. Naruto, maybe you should sit down. She said softly, her hands coming over his own and pulling them from her face. Hinata, you're really scaring me. What's going on? Why did Sakura say you had a mission when you're right here? Why were you hiding from me? I'm not, I mean. She thought for those perfect words. When he didn't make any movement to sit down, she took up her own invitation and sat on the couch that was covered in a mess of blankets. Hinata. He now sat next to her, so concerned, so worried. She loved it and at the same time she hated it. She knew the moment the words slipped out all that concern would fly out the window, what would replace it however was beyond her. I have been sick. She started gently. Maybe it was best to just ease your way into something like this. With what? I was throwing up a lot, and food poisoning. Is it because I cooked that one time? I knew I shouldn't have used that old spice I found in the back of the pantry. No, not from food poisoning. Then what? Naruto, do you remember my birthday? She said, trying not to look at him, though even looking on the other side of the room she could not miss that small smile on his lips. He was such a boy. Then it left, leaving a confused expression where it was blissful just a second before. Is that why you got sick? He asked, confused. Hinata laughed inside her head. He had no idea how right he was. Sort of, she said, still not wanting to look at him. Sort of. Do you remember what you ate? Oh, we had ramen, right? Did you order something different? Wait, your birthday was several weeks ago, why would you just get sick? His voice stopped in mid-sentence. She snuck a glace over at him, he looked as though someone hit him with a stun gun. The wheels in his head turned with magnificent speed, he was putting the puzzle pieces together wonderfully. Hinata, are you? He said it and peered at her. His blue eyes blazed, almost begging her that it wasn't true. Begging her he was wrong and she would laugh and blush, stuttering it wasn't. Naruto, we. She was choking on the words. Funny how it came so easily when she told the most powerful and strongest ninja in the village. Funny how she could easily tell the one person who could out her at the drop of a hat and therefore single-handedly destroy much of her life. Funny how that came so easily, but telling the one person you knew cared for you more than even he could form into words was by far the hardest thing Hinata had ever had to do in her 17 years of living. You're pregnant, he whispered to her, almost like he was afraid to say it out loud. She bit her lip and nodded. She shut her eyes and then opened them again, looking at him. He didn't look at her anymore. He looked at an empty spot on the floor. His eyes looked glazed over, his mouth was in a thin line, but his body was rigid. She lifted her hand to touch his own, but the moment her skin touched his, he jumped from his seat. He stood up and stared at her, almost as if he was angry at her. Naruto, she started, but he cut her off. How? I mean you use, and I mean, were careful, are you sure? Yes, she said, her small voice. She watched him try to stop his trembling hands by running them through his hair. She watched him shut his eyes tight and then open them again, like her, wanting it all to be a very, very bad dream. She saw 1,000 emotions flash through those blazing blue eyes of his. She saw 1,000 questions dance on his tongue. Naruto, she started again, this time standing up and going to him. She out a hand on his chest, it was rigid to her touch. She heard his breath come out in small short gasps. He was very upset. Fear suddenly struck in her. Did he blame her? Naruto, I'm sorry, I thought we was safe too, she said. Suddenly it was getting very hard to suppress all those tears she wanted to let out. Does anyone know? He asked suddenly to her. She wasn't sure if his voice was really harsh or she was just imagining it. Well, why yes, Sakura knows, she was the one to told me. He seemed a bit relieved to know that. Sakura was a good friend. And, Tsunade, she said slowly, watching his eyes widen and stare at her. You told Tsunade? He asked, stunned. I had to, she said, taking her hands away from him and clasping her own chest. You had to? Yes. When she got word that Sakura pulled me from the mission, she demanded to know why. When Sakura refused to tell her, it was because when she wouldn't say anything, I did, because then Sakura was going to get in more trouble. She was already in enough trouble for lying like that, she rambled on, watching his expressions change. Does she know it's mine? Naruto asked quietly. She knew the insinuation was not intended, but that didn't lessen the shock. Also, being pregnant did not do well for the hormones. Of course she knows it's yours. Naruto, soon everyone will know. Everyone? He asked, looking at her again. Now she saw fear. Yes, eventually everyone will have to know. I can keep this quiet for a while, but I mean, how many times can I claim to be too sick to go in mission without causing concern? She said, repeated Tsunade's words. When he didn't respond, she knew it was because he knew all the odds they were up against. She was the daughter of the head of the Hyuga. He was anything but honorable blood to mix with. He was also the apprentice to the Hokage herself. They were both under 18. They were both very important people. She gave me time to tell my father. She continued. She told me I have a month to do it my way until she takes on priority. Priority? He asked. His voice sounded so distant for some reason. Because I am 17, and because I still live under my father's roof, he must be informed of this. He must know why I will not be going on missions for almost a year. He must know all of this. Her voice trailed off when she saw him run his hands through his hair again. She hated when he did that. What are you going to do? He asked, not looking at her again. Me? She asked. Even if he didn't mean it, it still sounded as though he was accusing her of doing this all on her own. Naruto, I know this is a little shocking, but it's not just me in this. You still have to make the final decision. He pointed out evenly. Naruto, she started, but he was already walking toward the door. She attempted to run after him, but something rooted her to her spot. Where are you going? Her voice was weak, weaker than she could ever remember it being. I need to think. He said without turning around, and in one fell swoop, he was out the door and she was alone. Sakura didn't come home that night. Hinata was glad. She had no idea how to explain to the girl that the man she said would not abandon had just walked out the door. Hinata brushed a strand of hair off her daughter's face after she laid her sleeping tiny body on Sakura's couch. After a few hours of hyperactivity after her ice cream, her body was now demanding to be re-energized. She gave the girl another thoughtful touch before rejoining her friend at the kitchen table. Sakura sat at the table thumbing through the books Hinata had brought over. 6 months and I hardly hear from you. Hinata eyed her friend at the table. I was on a mission, Hinata, you know that. How did they allow you to go on a mission in your condition? Hinata asked. Fond memories of being pulled from every single mission in the book came to mind. As a medic, I was allowed to go, and I was needed. I went to supervise the medic team. It wasn't so much of a mission as it was a strange kind of vacation. I really wasn't allowed to do much but tell people what they did wrong and address the wounds. When they really big stuff came in, I was shuffled out of the room. Well, at least I was paid. Sakura sighed. Hinata knew she hated feeling helpless. That pseudo mission must have been a hit to her ego. You're sure you're not going to need these back anytime soon? Sakura smiled at her friend, quick to change the subject off of her. What's that supposed to mean? Hinata eyed her amused. Well, I think it's about time Yumi wants a playmate of her own. Sakura smiled again, this time her eyes falling on the small girl on the couch. Hinata tried hard to frown but was too amused to completely pull it off. She's competitive. You have two, I have one, and she wants to win. Hinata's explanation earned a small chuckle from the woman by her side. Have you thought of it? She asked, that same smile still on her face. Another child would be, I don't know, I don't even think we've discussed it yet. Yumi alone still needs so much attention. Hinata, she's almost 5, I think if you plan on having another one you should before she gets too old. Another one. I was hardly ready for the first one. The circumstances were different, and besides you can't sit there and tell him it would be a bad thing to have Yumi become an older sister. What did Sasuke say when you told him? She asked, changing subjects quickly. Sakura was quick to notice but her face remained amused. She followed the change and didn't press her friend anymore. He was, Sasuke. Sakura mused, thumbing through her book but looked up suddenly with a dark smile on her face. Don't tell him I told you, but I think he's more excited than I am. Hinata smiled. How familiar did that sound? Where is he anyway? A mission, said he should be back in about a week. Sakura's smile faded, and then looked thoughtfully at her friend. Were you scared? Of course, Hinata said, and then smiled. But I was 17. You are happily married and now 21. But you only had one. Sakura corrected, her hands going to her large stomach again. I did, but I would assume birth is all the same. Speaking of which, why did you demand those books if you're a medic nin yourself? I specialize in combat. Things like broken bones, lost tissue, failing organs and poison I know how to fix and mend. The medical mechanics of a baby is almost completely foreign to me. I skipped that session when training to with Tsunade. I failed to see where it would come important with the war with Orochimaru. When the doctor started to explain the chakra system and that of growing a child, I thought it would be best to do some studying on my own on that part. Sakura smiled again. Hinata returned her friend's smile and sipped her tea. While Sakura turned each page, and forget more and more of her company's presence. Hinata, however, was not offended. Her attention was being stolen by the small sleeping beauty on the red couch. So peaceful and innocent, so perfect even in a house that wasn't hers. With a small pang of guilt, Hinata wondered how there was ever a time she wasn't wanted. When the sun rose, it prickled its way through the blinds in the window and onto her eyelids. Annoyed and even more depressed, she didn't have any sleep. Hinata threw the covers over her head in an attempt to get more sleep. After Naruto had left last night, she foolishly stayed up for him to return to her. When an hour passed, she waited for after 2, then 3, then 4 until eventually she came to realize he would not come back tonight. She let herself lie in bed and try to sleep, but still in the back of her mind she still waited. She fooled herself into thinking that maybe he would sweep in just as she fell asleep, save her day at the last moment she felt helpless. But he never did. She jolted herself awake what felt like every few seconds. Each time the room was just as dark and quiet as before. When the door opened and closed, she didn't stir from under her covers. She didn't answer to Sakura asking if she was awake or if Naruto had left early that morning. She didn't answer when Sakura appeared back from the bathroom and told her she was going to work and would be back later tonight. She didn't come back up from under the covers until her bladder let her know it was time to emerge for a much-needed TS. Once out the bathroom and standing up straight, Hinata started to think again. She could wallow in the previous night over and over again, or she could get to work on what to tell the remaining man in her life about this news. Of course, going on Naruto's reaction didn't give her much confidence about what she now needed to do. She began to think of things she could have done, or could have said. Should she have run after him when he closed the door behind him? What should she have done differently? Her stomach turned the more she thought. Was it the pregnancy or was it her restless thoughts and what felt like the beginnings of a broken heart? Whatever it was, she had to stop herself before she got carried away. Right now she needed to focus on what was really going to be scary. She needed a plan. First off, she needed a place to go after she spoke to her father. She was sure the man would not be very supportive of his daughter who was with child by the man who was seen as the demon of the village. So where to go? She could come back here, but again that would just be hard on Sakura. She was sure her friend would want her own space back sometime. Her mind ran with lists of names, but how to approach them without feeling like you were imposing. Ino lived with her parents, and that would really just be rude to ask for that, not to mention Ino was the village #1 gossip, and that's the last thing she needed right now. Maybe 1010, she was after all, unofficially dating her cousin, she would surely help, wouldn't she? But how to go about that? How could she talk to 1010 about needing a place to stay without letting on to what was really happening until she told her father? She came to the conclusion the less people who knew about this the better. But then again, maybe having so many people on your side wasn't such a bad thing, and it wasn't like 1010 wasn't smart. She could probably help her too, she had always helped her in the past. It was after all 1010 who gave her those pointers about Naruto. Naruto. Maybe she should go find him now. No, she couldn't go out of the house, she couldn't go look for him. And besides, what if he didn't even want to see her? He never came back, he was probably upset at her. That thought alone shook Hinata hard, she felt a burn in her eyes and a lurch in her stomach. She blinked and shook her head. She couldn't think about that now, she couldn't let Naruto cloud all the thoughts she needed to think clearly. She needed to form a plan. A secure plan that would enable her to have a place to sleep after her father kicked her out and disowned her. She didn't know how long she sat in silence looking at nothing particular. Occasionally her eyes began to tear up and she sniffled. Other times she just stared as if waiting for a brilliant plan to hit her in the face. When the door opened she was almost startled and turned to greet Sakura, pulling a smile on her face, but it dropped into surprise and then small confusion. I thought you could use some company. 1010 sat down on the couch and waited for Hinata to join her. How? I heard Tsunade and Sakura talking this morning about your health, are you okay? Oh, I got sick, and Sakura pulled me from the mission. I'm staying here to get some real rest. Feeling any better? It comes and goes. What are you doing here? I saw Sakura and Naruto fighting in the training grounds, they were really going at it. When I heard your name being tossed around I figured it was something big. Hey, what's wrong? Hinata didn't realize it, but she had started crying quite harshly. Naruto and Sakura fighting. What did that mean? Surely that wasn't a good sign. Oh no, that could not be good at all. Maybe she really was alone now, maybe Naruto didn't just walk out for air, maybe he couldn't have. He loved her, didn't he? Didn't he love her like he always said he did? Why would that suddenly change? 1010, she started whipping tears from her eyes even though they continued to pour. I need your help. Hinata, what's going on? You're starting to get me worried. Should she tell 1010? Should she tell her everything and of the plan she was working in her head? Would it be good to tell her? Sakura already knew, and as wonderful as 1010 was, maybe having her knowing was more people than who needed to know. I'm going to tell my father about me and Naruto, and he'll be very upset. Can I, I mean if you can't I understand, but I was wondering if I could, maybe stay there for a bit. He'll kick me out for a few days. She let her voice trailed off. It wasn't a complete lie, much of it was very true. Of course. 1010 said without hesitation, so much that Hinata even got suspicious. Don't look at me like that. I know you can't stay with Naruto because he'll probably be out for blood on him, and Sakura would be a giveaway on finding you because of her relationship with Naruto. So you're more than welcome to stay with me. 1010 gave her that girlish smile she always supported. It was so sweet it even made Hinata ease for the second it was displayed. Do you want to talk about what they were fighting about? I mean, I would assume it had to do with you. I came here because I thought it would be something serious if Sakura was throwing your name around and Naruto was yelling things like, you don't understand, and looked ready to sucker punch someone. Are you sure you're okay? Hinata sniffed and whipped her tears away. It was worse than she thought. It was worse than she could ever imagine. She felt her stomach give another lurch, this one more violent than before. Yeah, I'm fine. I just haven't really eaten anything all day, she said, lying again, but Tenten didn't argue. She went to Sakura's kitchen and began to rummage through her fridge and cabinets. Even though Hinata didn't have the stomach for anything Tenten gave her, she couldn't hurt the girl's feelings by refusing it either, so she gulped it down forcibly even though her body lurched and she had to excuse herself to the bathroom a few times. However, given her fake illness, Tenten seemed to understand this and only gave her sympathetic smiles when Hinata excused herself. The two watched television for most of the day, Hinata glad for the company and glad that the part that counted in her plan was done. Tenten would be her safe base, once she came up with the right way to tell her father she could seek refuge with her. That would be easier for everyone. Sakura would be rid of her mooching, Tenten being Neji's teammate and unofficial official girlfriend would be her best bet of keeping her safe and secure. Neji would know where she is and not worry like he always tended to do nowadays. The only missing puzzle was him. The man who was 50% responsible for this was currently arguing in training grounds and running away. Hinata had a sudden surge of pain and anger through her. Had Tenten been looking at her friend instead of engrossed in the soap opera, she would have seen Hinata's usual pale eyes so innocent turn dark and dangerous looking. I'm going to get some air, Hinata announced in a level voice. Tenten gave her a nod as she walked out. The cold bit at her the moment she stepped outside, but she welcomed it. Who cared if someone saw her? Who cared if they went to her father and asked why she wasn't on that mission of hers? She needed to breathe in that crisp January air. So crisp and clean with cold. Snow was everywhere, on rooftops and the grounds, parts of it dirty and muddy, others still so perfect and white. Ice hung from the rooftops, almost giving Konoha a magical winter wonderland feel to it. And Hinata would have been perfectly happy to actually believe this if at the moment she wasn't issuing waves of anger through her body. She was getting more upset by the second. Her anger blinding her from clear thought. She saw Naruto in her mind's eye. She saw him turn on her and walk out the door while she had those tears of fear in her eyes. She saw all those times he held her and promised so much to her, and then she saw him walk away. He walked away. Just like that, he walked away and shut the door. How could he? How could he do such a thing? How could her Naruto, the Naruto she loved so much because he was so wonderful and perfect, do such a thing so horrible to her? She still felt suffocated, just as she had been inside with Tenten. She still felt like she couldn't breathe despite the cool chill surrounding her. She had to leave, she had to get out. She began to run, she ran until something stopped her and she felt with her knees in the snow. She didn't know where she was, she didn't know who was around her, and she didn't care. The cold soaked through her pants and to her legs. They made her shiver, but she didn't care. She felt hot tears burn her eyes, and with a flutter of her lashes they poured down furiously. She knelt in the snow and cried. Cried for everything. Cried for her misfortune, cried for the child in her that wasn't wanted, cried for the man she loved and how he walked away, and cried for her now very uncertain and freighting future. She heard snow crunching behind her and then speed up. She felt a hand on her and someone call her name, but she couldn't stop the sobs, she couldn't stop the tears. They pulled her up off the snow, but she just latched onto them and cried into their chest. They held her close, maybe to comfort her or to warm her, she didn't know, nor did she care. All she wanted to do was cry. Get it out of her, get this out so it couldn't come back. She didn't know how long she cried before she let it turn into small sobs and then began to go quiet. No one stopped her though, and the person holding her never made her look at them. She pulled away to wipe her eyes and apologized profusely to the warm body when blue eyes met hers. Her breath was caught in her tea. Whatever he had planned to say to her, Hinata did not care to hear. She turned on her heel and with more tears threatening her eyesight she ran away. She heard the snow crunch behind her, she heard her name being called, but she didn't turn around her stop. She wanted to disappear, she wanted to leave and never come back to this place. She felt something grab her wrist, she felt her body be whirled around and she was facing him again. She looked into those blazes of blue with her own tear-stained ones. He looked worried, if not a bit confused by her actions. Anger and pain surged inside her again. She used her free hand to yank her arm free. Leave me alone, she said weakly, even though she knew she meant it. For some reason her voice refused to cooperate. Hinata, he said, and she struggled again. Please let me go, she said, her sobs coming again. She continued to struggle meekly, but he caught both her wrist and pulled her to him. Hinata, please. No, she said, but let herself be brought into his warm arms. Please, he said again, his breath warming her ear. And she gave in. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.